Let me start with a picture I took in the British Library in London. As you see, this picture shows a book. The name of the book is Ancient Mysteries. It was published in London in the early 19th century. The book doesn't look very spectacular. It's really small, about the size of a cigarette box. But it's very spectacular to look inside the book because it can't be read. It's encrypted. Well, as you see, we have here on the left side the title page of the book. On the right side, we have page number 40. And I will come back to this encrypted book later. For now, it's enough to say that Ancient Mystery is an example of an encrypted book. And when I was in the British Library earlier this year, and I looked at this book, and I thought, well, I know a few other encrypted books, then I asked myself, have encrypted books ever been catalogued? And as far as I know, this is not the case. And guess what I decided? Well, I decided to make a catalog myself. And this is the list I came up with. Altogether, I found 32 encrypted books in the literature I'm aware of. Well, of course, 32 encrypted books are too much to talk about them in 15 minutes, so I made a short list. These are the 9 most interesting ones, and I will mention them in my presentation in a little more detail. But first of all, let me talk about the questions I asked myself about these encrypted books. I had compiled a list of 32 books, all of them encrypted, and of course one important question is the encryption broken? Second question, when was it created? Third question, what's the content? And finally, is the book available for research? And now let's go through these questions. Question number 1. We have 32 encrypted books on my list, and in how many cases is the encryption broken? The answer is in 22 cases. That means most of the encrypted books I'm aware of have been cracked, but there are still 10 that are not broken, so there's still a lot of work to do. That's one of the main messages of my presentation. Let me start with the most famous encrypted book that exists. It's the Voynich manuscript. Maybe you remember 2 years ago I gave a presentation here about the Voynich manuscript. This time I can only cover it in on 2 or 3 slides. The Voynich manuscript, after the presentation you can look at this file here. Here are all the pages. Ilonka has given this to me. The Voynich manuscript was probably created in the 15th century. The author is unknown, the place of creation is unknown, and the purpose of the book is unknown too, so almost everything is unknown. Especially it is unknown what all these plans mean. There are more than 130 plans in the Voynich manuscript, and all of them seem to be fantasy products because they cannot be identified. A very strange book, and of course, here at this conference, the text is the most important part. The whole book is written in an unknown writing system, and it can't be read. So the question is, what is it? Well, in my view, it must be some mixture between real natural language and some artificial part, because the statistical examinations of the book clearly say that there's much resemblance with natural language, but there are still a few examinations saying, well, it can't be natural language, so it must be something close to it, but not really natural language. Okay, this was the Voynich manuscript. Let's now get to an encrypted book that has been solved. In fact, it's just a few weeks ago that it has been solved, so it's something completely new. The Zauberhandschrift. This is a German book located in a library in Kassel. Zauberhandschrift means magic manuscript. It was written Germany in the 18th century. And as you see, it's again an unknown writing system, but this time it's pretty simple. The encryption was solved by these two ladies. These are no cryptologists, they are employees of the library in Kassel, and honestly the encryption was not very hard to break. It was a simple substitution cipher, so it was even possible to break this encryption for two laymen or lay women. And no matter, we have one book that has been cracked recently. I can't talk much about the content of these books today because the time is too short, so I will only talk about the encryption. Now let's ask ourselves, when were these books created? And 5 of them were created after 1970 and 27 of them before 1970. That means most of these books have really historic value, but there are also a few newer ones. This is one of the new ones, pretty strange, but it's quite new, created in 2010 by this guy here, Gordon Ruck, who is a Voynich manuscript expert. And this book, which he created, the so-called Penitentia manuscript, is mainly a cryptologic puzzle. Doesn't have a historical background, but as I said, it's a puzzle, and it's an encrypted book with 16 pages, and this is why I added it to my list. The special thing about this book is that it's not known whether it must be read from left to right, or right to left, or upside down, or bottom up, and it's not known what the red letters mean. So, if you want to solve it, it should be possible. Gordon Ruck said that the encryption is not too sophisticated, but so far it has not been solved. Now the question is, what is the content of all these encrypted books? I have found 5 different categories. 11 of the books are diaries or memoirs, like this one here. This one is a diary written in the Second World War by Italian spy and partisan Antonio Mausi. And he did a pretty good job in encrypting because it was quite good encryption algorithm and it was hard to crack. It was a double columnar transposition cipher. But earlier this year, a German computer scientist and hobby codebreaker cracked this encryption. So Antonio Mausi's diary has been solved. And this guy here, Armin Kraus, a German countryman of mine, was the one who cracked this double columnar transposition, which was a very good job because this diary had been around for years. It was available on the internet and nobody managed to crack it, but finally he did. 6 of the books were published by secret societies, and now I'm coming back to the book named Ancient Mysteries I mentioned at the beginning. Ancient Mystery, in fact, is a book published by a secret society. This is the decrypted version of it, so it has been cracked by British codebreaker Tony Gaffney. Now you see that the book is really called Ancient Mysteries, and you even see that it was published by an organization named the Association of Maiden Unity and Attachment. And this is very interesting. It was a secret society in the early 19th century for women only. So it must have been an early organization of the women's equal rights movement. And as far as I know, this book is the only evidence we have that this organization ever existed. So I think it's quite interesting, but as I said, I won't talk about the content of these books today. The encryption was not very difficult, it was a simple letter substitution. 6 of the books are art or puzzles. Usually they don't have a historic background, they are quite new. Like this one, the Codex Seraphinianus, or Seraphinianus. Some of you might know it, a very strange book, published in 1981 by Italian architect Luigi Serafini. And yes, like some of the speakers before, I make it a bit more interesting. But there are a lot of very strange pictures in this book. And as you see, the writing system is really strange. So maybe it's not even an encrypted text at all, maybe it's just nonsense, but before we know that for sure, I think it's justified to put this book on the list of encrypted books. 4 of the books contain something like secret knowledge. Like this one, it's another book I found in the British Library. It's called The Subtlety of Witches, and it was published in the 17th century by some bin Azra Asad, which I don't know. The book is probably about witchcraft. The encryption has been cracked by Tony Gaffney, a British codebreaker, and so that means in principle it's known how this book can be decrypted, but as far as I know, nobody has ever done that before. So if you're looking for an interesting job, which shouldn't be too difficult, you can decrypt this book, and I can name you about 6 or 7 others which are in the same status. That means the encryption has been cracked, but nobody has taken the effort so far to make decryption. So it shouldn't be too difficult, as I said. Now, 5 of the books have an unknown content, or the purpose is unknown. For example, this one, this is the Codex Rohansi. Benedict Lang is certainly one of the leading experts on this book. I made a facsimile of it, so after the presentation you might want to look at it. The Codex Rohansi is a book from the 16th century. It's again written in an unknown writing system, and it's not known what the whole thing means. The purpose of the book is not known. We can guess that it contains some religious content because we have Christian pictures in there, Jesus on the cross and things like that. And Benedict has told me that 2 Hungarian researchers seem to be pretty close to the solution of this book, but